Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. So today we're actually unpacking the reality behind, honestly, one of the most famous predators to ever walk the earth, the Velociraptor. Seriously, just go ahead and forget all of that Hollywood magic for a second, because we're going to build the real dinosaur from the ground up. And let me tell you, the truth is way more incredible than the myth.
So, think you know the Velociraptor? I mean, most of us probably picture this massive, scaly, hissing beast, right? Hunting in packs? But honestly, matching that up against actual fossil records means we kind of have to unlearn decades of pop culture conditioning. Are you ready for the truth?
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The pop culture monster.
To really understand the reality, we've got to deconstruct the myth first. Hollywood basically sold us a creature with three main traits: a giant, intimidating size, reptilian, scaly skin, and this totally terrifying, near-human, door-opening intelligence. And it taps into our primal fears of apex predators, absolutely. But paleontologically speaking, yeah, this creature is a complete fabrication. It's literally a ghost. Which brings us to Section 2, Meet the Real Velociraptor.
Let's ground ourselves in the actual science for a second here. The Velociraptor belongs to a family of dinosaurs known as Dromaeosauridae. Now, these were incredibly agile carnivorous theropods. But the real giveaway? Well, that's the translation of the name itself, which actually means swift Caesar. Notice it doesn't mean giant man-eater or scaly genius. It implies a creature that relies on speed, precision, and agility to snatch up its prey. It survived and thrived in a really harsh environment through rapid movement, not brute force.
Now, when we place that towering movie monster directly against the fossil record, well, the data completely shatters our expectations.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how shockingly small the true Velociraptor really was. We're talking about an animal roughly the size of a modern-day turkey, or, at its absolute largest, a coyote. Honestly, if you stood next to a real Velociraptor, it wouldn't be breathing down your neck at all. It would barely reach your knees. Imagine an angry 40-pound farmyard rooster with teeth. That's what we're looking at. It was lightweight, it had hollow bones, and it was super compact. So it wasn't out there hunting massive armored herbivores, it was a nimble opportunist.
Moving right along to Section 3, Feathers instead of Scales.
When we place the whole Hollywood myth of a scaly reptile up against scientific reality, we find out that the Velociraptor was actually fully feathered. And we aren't just talking about, a little tuft of hair on the head, or maybe a few stray quills on the arms. No way. Evidence from quill knobs found on Velociraptor arm bones, which by the way are the exact same anchor points for feathers that we see in modern birds, proves this animal was covered in a really dense coat of feathers. So it looked a lot more like a lethal ground-running hawk than some kind of overgrown iguana.
But you might be wondering why feathers? Well, they certainly weren't for flight. Instead, they served as this absolutely vital evolutionary adaptation for survival in a really arid, desert-like habitat. Turns out, these feathers are incredible insulators. They protected this small, warm-blooded creature from the intense heat during the day and then the freezing temperatures at night. Plus, they probably could have been used for display, or communication, or even acting like sort of natural air brakes, right? Helping the animal change direction rapidly while running at high speeds. Every single part of this creature was just perfectly tuned to its harsh reality.
All right, let's talk about Section 4, the famous toe claw.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we can kind of reconstruct this animal piece by piece to understand its survival strategy. Starting right at the front, its long, narrow snout was filled with these serrated teeth perfectly designed for specific feeding behaviors. Think snapping up small lizards, mammals, or insects. Then, of course, we have the toe claw. This infamous sickle-shaped claw on the second toe was its primary weapon, and it actually kept it raised off the ground while walking just to retain its deadly sharpness. And finally, the tail. So rather than being flexible like a whip, the tail was actually stiffened by bony tendons. This acted as a super rigid counterbalance, which basically allowed the raptor to make these incredibly sharp turns at an absolute full sprint, without, toppling over.
So how did all these crazy anatomical tools actually work together? Well, let's just walk through the mechanics of a hunt. Step 1. Locate prey. Using its speed and keen senses, a raptor spots a small mammal or lizard hiding out in the desert scrub. Step 2. Pin down the target. And guys, here is where the myth completely shatters, because instead of slashing bellies like some kind of ninja, the Velociraptor actually hunted a lot like a modern eagle. It would literally leap onto its prey, using its own body weight to pin it to the earth. And then step 3, utilize the toe claw for piercing and holding.
That's right, those terrifying sickle claws weren't for disemboweling giant dinosaurs. They were actually used to firmly puncture and grip squirming prey to the ground while the jaw went to work. It's just a brutal, highly efficient, and incredibly specialized hunting technique.
Which leads us to Section 5, the true raptor legacy.
So the crucial point is that reality is often stranger, and honestly way cooler than fiction. You see, paleontology isn't a static science. It's constantly updating our understanding of evolution with every single new fossil we discover and every new technological advancement we make. And you know, the Velociraptor isn't less interesting just because it was small and feathered. If anything, it's actually more interesting, because it gives us this direct, undeniable link from the evolutionary journey of dinosaurs straight to the birds we see outside our windows every single day. Mind-blowing, right?
Which kind of leaves us with a final, lingering thought here. If something as universally recognized as the Velociraptor could be so completely misunderstood by the general public, well, how many other facts do you hold that might actually be fiction? It's a pretty great reminder to just stay curious, you know? Keep questioning those accepted narratives and always be willing to dig just a little bit deeper for the real story. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep exploring, and I'll catch you on the next one.